This is Storyboard.
I'm Zach.
I'm Jameson, and welcome back to this next installment in our podcast series.
We're back to Eternity Found.
Yep.
It actually does have 5 founds in the title.
No, it's just Eternity Found.
Found.
So this week, we are going back to Eternity Found, like Zach said, and we're going to explore a little bit more into that universe. Specifically, Avalon Industries. We touched a little bit on it last time, but this time we're going to get deep into detail on that.
Now, if you remember from our last podcast, we talked a bit about Avalon Industries and how they are sort of becoming the peacekeeping force of the universe.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a long story before that.
Yeah, there's a history to this. And we also talked about the Court of the Constellations, how this is basically the government of this entire universe.
A big area.
massive area of this galaxy. And as you remember, the Court of the Constellation is a combining of multiple planets, sending a representative, kind of a Congress really, to meet as a court to decide on laws, stipulations, different factors, wars, things like that, to try to keep a close tie between planets.
And just as there are many planets in this area, there are a lot of people with different beliefs and different outlooks. And so, as you can imagine, the court is not a very cohesive unit. It likes to argue.
They argue quite often, and it's rare for them to come to a unanimous decision. It turns out to be more of this side has more of the vote than the other.
Majority rules situation.
Yes. And in this scenario, they found themselves at a lack of power within the universe. Yes, they have the representation, but they do not have the protection that they need.
When you spend forever to make a decision, it's hard to have power.
Yes. Now, as slow-moving as this giant conglomeration, this court is, they found that it's hard to obtain people as resources to hold their law.
To get soldiers.
To get soldiers, yeah.
To get the lawmakers, the policemen, the people to say, like, yeah, we want to actually uphold this law.
Mm-hmm. And it was agreed to by the court that they would find the best and brightest of anybody in the galaxy to join. The stipulations being previous training, experience protecting or guarding or,
So, for example, if they were to come to Earth, they would probably pick the Israeli military.
Mm-hmm.
One of the most highly trained in the world. But they would leave out the U.S. military and the German military and all the others because they're just like, these are the most specialized. We just want them.
Yes. They want the best of the best because they feel like having a tight, close group that can enforce the law to the best of quality, that they can keep it controlled. But this leads to other factions coming in and just stomping all over their rules and their laws. This creates multiple factions deemed as pirates, basically, that do not adhere to the laws set by the court within the galaxies that maybe not fully agreed to those laws.
And when I think of pirates, and it applies a lot to some of the pirates in this world too, they are going around and stealing things. They are going around and murdering and not doing great things. But the law has no hold on them. they just can't get to them at all. I mean, they don't have the manpower because there are tons of these pirates everywhere. They don't have the authority or even the cohesiveness as a group to get together to go out to fight these guys.
Yep. You can say that almost these outside factions run a bit better than the court itself. The thing is that the court has the funding of the planets that joined within the Court of the Constellations. And because of that, they're spread thin. These men combining to just pillage, do whatever they want, and their protection, yes, being very, very good at their jobs, but not being able to handle everything in the galaxy at once.
I mean, there are multiple instances where the enforcement of the Court of Constellations goes out and they take down one of those pirate groups. Easily.
Yeah, easily. Very, very easily.
But you've played StarCraft, right?
Yeah.
Jameson,
yes,
you know
I
StarCraft.
have.
The Zerg.
Uh-huh. Zerg Russian?
Yeah. You got your nice little bunker here. You got your high-end infantry units. But against a couple thousand Zerg, you're not doing much.
Nope. You're not at all. And if they reallocate soldiers to one section to fight a battle or to help in a war or a conflict, they risk exposing whatever place they took from to attack by these outside factions.
And so by default, the court is forced to make some really tough decisions on what's important and what's not.
And a lot of the time, because they have the funding, they tend to go to hiring mercenaries to help do their work. The very outside factions that they would fight against in a later time or a different situation.
And so it's just a very odd balancing act that the court is having to play here. Especially once the pirates really start banding together.
Mm-hmm. Now there is one point where these pirates decided to come together and form a legal business within the court's eyes. Now, these outside factions, these pirate groups, they're fine with the Court of the Constellations. They live by it because they know that they can get away with things. If the court was any stronger than it is, they wouldn't be able to do what they do. And so they leave it be so that they can continue pirating.
And getting thrown in jail by 8 years old for downloading some songs off of Napster.
Oh, Napster. So they decided at one point to legalize themselves to be represented in the court so that their actions would be seen less as
as criminal actions and more as we're doing this as a business. This is how we run. We are completely legal in doing it.
Mm-hmm.
But they didn't really know how to go about that. They're just a bunch of pirates. They're doing their thing. They're going out and stealing and robbing and doing all they want. And they're like, we want to be a legitimate business so the court stops getting on our case. How?
In fact, this whole idea of them coming together and becoming a legal faction within the court was set forth by one man. His name, Dowie O'Reilly.
It's quite fun to say. Try saying it 5 times fast.
Dowie O'Reilly, Dowie O'Reilly, Dowie O'Reilly, Dowie O'Reilly, Dowie O'Reilly, Dowie O'Reilly.
That was 6 times.
No. So this man, he didn't only just come to the pirates and offer them a way to be legalized so that their actions wouldn't be seen as criminality, but more of a hired mercenary or a conflict avoidance situation.
Hello, we're the Conflict Avoidance Squadron, here to rob your goods.
If you have nothing valuable to be seen, nobody will want to fight for it. So
you're welcome for taking your family heirloom. Oh, Grandma doesn't need a ring.
Mm-hmm. Dowie O'Reilly not only helped the pirates form this, but he went to the court of the Constellation and told them of a plan. Of a plan to help them to disperse and dismantle the pirate factions once and for good.
And it all had to deal with sabotage. Dowie, he's not really a tough man, a strong man. He's an elderly gentleman. He's got nice hair.
Yes.
I mean, he's like that elderly gentleman that, like, all the ladies are like, oh, he's hot. But it's probably just because of his experiences in mind. You know, like those movie actors.
Yeah.
Like Gerard Butler.
Yeah.
Gerard Butler's getting up there in age, but everybody's like, oh, Gerard, he's hot. I imagine him like that. Just like, he's a very composed gentleman, but he's not going to win any fistfights.
No, he's not. He's more of an intelligent person. And he's been working all of his life to create a way to help the court of the Constellations. And through this plan of breaking these pirates, he's kind of introducing this plan, this business as he's trying to begin. Now, for quite a few years before this pirate scenario happened, he's been working to recruit people for his cause. Now, we told you about how the court only recruits the people that are the best suited for policing the galaxy. Dowie decided everybody else is missing the opportunity. Everybody else wants to defend their homes, wants to defend their worlds, and wants to stand up for what's right. But because of their lesser qualifications, they're not accepted into this defense.
And so, for instance, if Dowie were to come to Earth, going back to that example, the Israeli military is gone, but he has all the others to pick from, and volunteers that want to actually protect. And so he ends up with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of more people at his disposal, at his use. I don't want to say disposal. That's a horrible word when coming with people. He doesn't
want to dispose people.
In order to protect the universe, the constellations.
Yeah. And he decides to offer them the best training. He takes the best martial artists he can find, the greatest gun shooters, the greatest marksmen.
The engineers. I mean, it goes the whole... from top to bottom, from the gunsmen to the engineers to the latrine workers to the plumbers.
And he finds a way to train future generations that want to help as well. So he has a vast amount of resources just from volunteers.
Also a horrible word to use when talking about people. Resource.
Yes. Though he doesn't see them as a resource, he sees them as...
No, Dowie's actually a really cool guy.
He is a very good guy. He's not seeing them as exposable, or disposable resources. He sees them as the valuable people that want to help defend their universe. Now, he's giving them that opportunity. So with this, he forms Avalon Industries, a industry purposed to help defend the righteous of the galaxy, whether it be through the law or without the law.
It's just an awesome thing that he does. He does it to protect people. The people he hires do it to protect people. He sees that the government is faltering. It's actually a pretty decent government, the court is. It's representatives from each planet. I mean, whether or not that representative is completely good and not corrupt, who knows? But that's one of the best things you can get with a full constellation, full universe represented. But Dowie, with presenting this plan, he's also sort of executing it at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Now, you'll see in the story of today that will be read to you a little bit more of what happens at that time frame. He infiltrates the pirates and he infiltrates the court so that he can explain himself. He uses his positioning with the pirates, helping legalize them so that he can destroy them from the inside, fund-wise, taking their money, taking everything that they have without them knowing, and then proving to the court that they're useful.
And so, I mean, Dowie does a full infiltration into the pirates. He literally becomes right-hand man to the queen of the pirates and starts building up funds, gets them legalized, by all intents and purposes, should be completely trustworthy in the eyes of the pirates. And then says, oh, hey, I've been siphoning your funds. Oh, hey, you have no money. Oh, hey, sorry about this.
Mm-hmm. Oh, hey, I just destroyed your entire infrastructure. I may have combined all the factions of pirates in the universe, but I've also brought them closer to see how you failed.
Mm-hmm. Good luck with no funding. Bye-bye.
He basically siphoned their funding, telling her, oh, this is to convince other pirate factions that we can afford their help, that we'll give them what they need so they will join us and be trustworthy towards us. But really, he's using those funds to fund resources for the people he's placed inside, to weaponize them, get them prepared to overcome and overtake the pirate factions. He's a brilliant man.
And so we see a lot of this in the story that Jameson is going to read to us. And it is masterfully executed without a single flaw. I mean, Dowie's a little bit nervous, but who wouldn't be? This is a brilliant stroke. And he successfully convinces the court to hire on Avalon.
Yeah. When the story starts out, what you will notice is that the pirates are currently attacking the constellations, or the court of the constellations in the crown planets. This is because of Dowie's actions, siphoning their funds, believing he had completely demolished them. But the queen, who is another character that has to be noted here, is also very intelligent.
She's pretty cool.
You'll get to see her in action. It's awesome. She secretly, she's very distrustful of everyone else. She's a pirate. She's a pirate to the core. So she
wears 3 eye patches.
She has hidden funds that she's collected, things that she knew that could be tampered with if she allowed other people to use it or control where it went. So, in her outrage, she took these funds and the ties that she gained from Dowie's work and uses it to attack the court.
Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of ships. Lots of mad pirates.
And the best of the ships up front at the court main building. And that's where the story will pick up.
And so we're going to skip, because we're not going to tell you about the story, because we're going to tell you about the story. Even though that's paradoxical.
We're not going to tell you right now, because we'll read it to you later.
But like I was saying earlier, I mean, with what happens, Dowie's able to convince the court. They're like, yeah, we need Avalon. Mm-hmm. We need you guys bad.
Oh, you mean we were stingy and we only chose what we wanted? Huh. And you have everything else that we need. Mm-hmm. The missing piece of the court.
Oh, there's that puzzle piece. I thought I left it down there.
Yep. Also, I want you guys to notice, as the story is read to you, there are characters that will be introduced that are integral to the story.
Extremely. There's one of them that is sort of snake-like and has teeth. There's actually a character in there. That's not an important one.
He's not important. No, he's a blip of a character. No, but you will meet 3 characters that are very important to the story. The last story you read about Ethel, that one is important as well. She is extremely important. She is extremely important.
For some strange reason.
For some, yeah. But in this, you'll meet more important characters. And I'll leave you at that. And we'll actually discuss them more on the next podcast about Eternity Found. We'll go into the second part of Avalon Industries, because this is such a crucial part of the story.
It's integral. It is very integral. So, sorry for cutting off right where we did. But there's more.
There's much more.
There is so much more.
All right, on to your questions.
Hey, guess what, Jameson?
What?
We actually have a question.
We have a question?
We have a question!
Oh my goodness, let's read it.
This question is from our loyal listener, Ereline96. She's actually left a review and a rating, too.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's loyalty.
Yeah, and you know, guys, if you want to support us the way she has and give us reviews, like us wherever you can, share it with your friends, let them enjoy as much as you have this podcast.
And we will give you a big sound hug.
Big sound hug. How does that sound?
It goes...
Just get some shirt movement in there.
That's great radio.
ASMR.
For those of you, meaning all of you, who could not see what happened, Jameson literally hugged the microphone and wiggled back and forth.
You are our listeners. I hugged your ears.
I hope you felt it, but at the same time, I really hope you didn't feel it.
You felt it on your brain.
Ugh, warm.
Right, to the question. Hi, guys. I have a question for Jameson. Oh, thanks. Hi.
Hi, Jameson.
What happened to poor Ethel? Is she a cryo doll, the thing you hinted at? Will we ever see her again? Or is she just an unfortunate victim for storytelling purposes? Thanks for the great podcast, guys.
Well, great question. Ethel is an unfortunate victim for story purposes that we will see again.
We will see her again. In fact, she is crucial. She is very, very important to the story. Now, the idea of cryodolls went far back for me. I explained it a little bit last time, that was the initial idea for this story that I got from a dream, was a thing that people traded in the future. You know, like, my initial thought was, you know, what if they did have somebody like Walt Disney, if he was, as people say, he's frozen. You know, we don't have the technology right now to be able to thaw them out without damaging them. And
how much could he sell for?
Yes. So in this far future, the funny idea I had was they had the technology. They discovered how to unfreeze them, to thaw them without permanently damaging their brain or destroying their bodies. But they decided, you know what, these people are worth more frozen.
I mean, how cool is it that I have this 14th century thing right here? I mean, that's flippin' awesome. Who wants it alive?
And I built from there. And so now this is a process that happens. People go to planets that are not yet space-bound, not yet fully understanding of futuristic technology. They find people that might not be missed. And they freeze them, take them, and sell them on the black market.
And so that's what happens to Ethel. She gets taken, she gets sold on the black market. The people selling her brainwash her, basically, making her think that she's a princess, and sell her as just that. This is a high-ranking royalty person. They go for, how much do you want to start this bidding at?
She's been frozen for 10,000 years. Mm-hmm. She fell into a lake running away from an evil, intruding king.
I heard there's weird things in the mountains.
And so this is a terrible thing that happens. The pirates get into it. Enemy factions, mercenaries, the black market. they deal in these kinds of things. It's a dark and gruesome thing.
And yet it becomes a status quo for high society. Like, if you don't have a cryo doll, are you really a billionaire?
And they slap rarity on these cryo dolls, depending on how old they are or their backgrounds, who they are, air quotes heavily implied.
And they have a collectible card game with them.
No, we don't need more collectible card games. So this is an insight to the story of Ethel and what we can expect from her in the future.
And we will tell you just one little thing. This cryo doll, Ethel, does end up in the custody of one of the main characters.
In the custody of a few, actually.
Mm-hmm.
So,
there you have it. Thank you, Arlene, for writing that question.
And once again, you guys, if you want to be part of the podcast, if you want to be mentioned, if you want to join us, and we shall rule the podcasts as
podcasters and podcasties.
Yes. Write a comment on whatever platform you're on. Send us an email at the email linked below. Or, well, I guess that's about it. Give us a shout out, Ask your questions. Let us know what you think. Give us a review.
And we will never give you a sound hug again.
No, I think I might make that a thing.
Oh, boy.
I'll give you a sound hug. Depending on how it sounds.
Anyways.
All right.
On to, once again, the most anticipated part of the podcast for me. We get to hear Jameson now read part of the story to you guys. As a reminder, this is not necessarily prologue, chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3. These stories can be anywhere within the universe, but they are all canon. So, onwards and upwards, back to Eternity Found, the Solar Trade.
The golden city of the crown of the court of constellations was under siege by a menagerie of heavily armed solar trade ships flying flags of multiple cultures and worlds. None of them were pristine in condition, but to the pirate clans, the more damage that was shown that didn't keep the ship from functioning, the more impressive the crew aboard it. The chaos attacking the crown paled in comparison to the chaos inside. This situation, the voice came from a distinct alien in a yellow robe, being streamed in virtually to the conference room that flew to the forefront of the large space filled with blue holograms of the many different politicians. Would have been entirely avoidable had we put a task force on taking them all out. Could you have supplied the troops for that? A flustered yet terrified representative spoke out, flying to the forefront to contest. We could have hired mercenaries to have given us the forces required, the first replied indignantly. A large table sat in the center of the zooming images, seating a small group of real people that counseled upon each suggestion made. It's too dangerous using unknown quantities in a fight like this. Besides, half the mercenary organizations work alongside the Solar Trade pirates. The image of an older man appeared in the front of the representatives, and sparked an uproar amongst the crowd. He was clean-cut and well-trimmed, with well-kempt black hair, and no markings on his skin except for the wrinkles that denoted his age. A cry came out. "This man is the reason all of this began in the first place!" Another spoke in agreement.
He helped legalize them within the constellations, forcing us to treat them as a business.
The elderly gentleman raised his hands in an attempt to quiet down the group of berating politicians. Very few of them actually quieted down, but the volume lowered enough for his words to break through. Esteemed representatives of the court, I apologize for the discord I have caused amongst you. I, Dowie O'Reilly, represent the newly founded Avalon Industries. We work to create peace in a hardship-stricken universe. Our goal in any task is to resolve situations peacefully and as quickly as possible. This caused a tumult of roars from the room to rise again at the clearly misproven words. Dowie raised his hands once more in an attempt to soothe their anger and speak again. This council allowed me to show the truth of our work, and I underestimated the pirates' conniving and distrustful ways of living. They stored up more currency than we were capable of tracking, and are currently purchasing allegiances with other factions by showing their strength here in the crown of the constellations. The voices raised again, giving him time to breathe and collect his thoughts. What they are not showing, however, is that by forcing you to draw out defenses around the galaxy, they are allowing these enemy factions to raid, attack, and claim portions of your constellations. They only hope that no one sees beyond the wall of ships they've placed at your borders. Now, it would be wise for you to take to your borders and be watchful of the pirates searching for unattended prizes. Many of the individuals represented in holographic forms disappeared at the sound of the news he brought to them. He understood that many now would be looking to bolster their own defenses, electing not to aid the crown. May I take this opportunity to state our second goal? If peaceful options aren't applicable, it is to provide troops and protection. A snake-like humanoid politician with a long neck and protruding fangs, sitting at the table in front of all the holograms, stood and questioned. You believe your people can do better than the professionals we already have as our courtmen? Yes, the simple answer came from Dowie, caused scoffing and laughter from the large group. The court has amazingly well-trained individuals, but whereas your court has hired many that were qualified to protect, we took the rest. There are men and women who desire to help the universe, but aren't as capable because of requirements or training. We offered them the greatest training possible, and have secured support from many planets who have volunteered to receive it. We have the greater quality and quantity that you now seek. What is your plan, then? A voice called out. My forces will move out around the borders of the constellations and secure the sectors before attacking the Pirate Queen's forces from behind. We will break their constitution so that they never recover, not how they have before. Dowie called out. The court began deliberating and debating upon his offer for help. Dowie felt the beads of sweat begin to form on his brow, as he struggled to keep his hands from showing his nervousness by wiping them away. Dowie O'Reilly was regularly a closed individual who loved to spare alone time, but now with the launch of Avalon, he has had to be the front, the face of the industry. This attempt at protecting the universe or providing power has never been done before without some form of corruption or mercenary-like business plan. As he suffered the sweat rolling down his face, he could feel his desire to stand in front of their arguing to falter more and more, until he only wanted to just escape. On the outside, however, he stood calm with a confident face. Finally, a voice broke through his exhaustion and caught his attention.
When can you provide these forces? Came the question. His resolve immediately bolstered, and he put on a large smile and said aloud so that all could hear above the conversations. We've already begun. The outer colonies and systems have already been secured. Our forces have built up and are prepared to take on the Queen's forces any day now. All we need is your authorization now, and for the foreseeable future, for us to be able to use any force required. Trust us that we don't misuse that authority, or break laws set forth by this court. The politicians did as they were used to doing, arguing without conclusion. To some it may sound you're holding our protection ransom. Who's to say this industry will be good for us, and not just be another solar trade? They argued amongst themselves, shouting out more and more rhetoric. Because we're not another solar trade. We are currently a part of this one. And we're not standing against you, but between the pirates and you. At this moment, my men are waiting for either the right moment or my word to take action and help save the crown. Ale flew through the air as raucous music played, making the mugs and cups dance as the drunkards threw them around in reasonable time to the beats. A few of the men and women sang along with the shanties, making the room almost sound like a musical, if it weren't for the many voices breaking the tone. The musician played with an old pieced-together string instrument that was worn from the many nights of rough hands striking against its chords. A large woman stepped into the room, as many of the voices faded silent. The musician slowed in confusion until he saw the newcomer. Fun! That's all we ever have! The woman yelled to the group, and they agreed with shouts of praise. Unfortunately, all this joy falls short because we seem to drink and wail our way through any form of riches we ever store up. The group began to look around fearfully, as if there were someone to blame for the abrupt tone shift in the woman's voice. She raised a gun to the side and shot the musician, toppling him over the chair to the floor. Today is not the day for fun. Well, not that kind, anyway. 2 men entered the room and carried the musician's body out. The woman spat on the body as it was carried, and then continued her speech. Today we will claim that well of wealth. It's been a long game becoming legal in the Crown's eye. But today we flew in as any business would. But instead of propositions, we're giving demands! The men cheered along with her words and began clinking their glasses together again. She took one of the mugs from a jeering pirate and raised it in the air herself. They know me as the president of the solar trade. They will come to know me as what I've always been. The queen of the pirates. One in the group shouted along, saying, For Queen Greneve! The rest of the people cheered and downed what was left in their cups. The queen turned and sauntered out of the room, as the pirates all took their places at different controls. 2 of the oddly dressed people turned as they worked and eyed one another. One tapped his ear, and the other nodded in response, to show that she had also received the hidden message. They sat on opposite sides of the room and prepared their hidden weapons. In one swift motion, the 2 moved inward, sweeping the room, taking out each of the pirates in rapid and practiced motions. They met in the middle of the room, unconscious pirate bodies strewn about, and turned to leave. They were stopped by a tall, lean figure in the entranceway, also dressed in overhanging clothes and a needless amount of jewelry. That was fast, Leo. I almost expected to have to do some of the heavy lifting myself. I think Pal wants us to leave him one next time. What do you think, Christia? Leo said as he looked towards the woman next to him. She eyed him in return. Maybe a small one. You know what? I'll leave the physical stuff to you 2. I, however, Palverian stepped into the room and over the passed-out men to sit at one of the systems. I'm more of a technical type. The vast group of ships hovered over the Court of Constellation's main campus, preparing to fire their guns upon the politicians hiding inside. The lead ship started to list awkwardly before a section of the engines exploded, sending it sideways, crashing into another ship in the line. The 3 infiltrators now held on to the consoles, so as not to fall around inside it. See? I told you I could make it happen. All it needed was the right diversion of power to... Yes, you're very smart. Less talk, more survival, Christia interrupted, holding strong to the secured machinery as the room spun around them. Leo clenched his teeth, holding himself to a bolted-down piece of metal as the ship started to spiral. Couldn't you have done this remotely? He yelled over the noise. Leo's sentence was drowned out by a jarring, screeching sound as the ceiling started to tear away by the hull of another ship that slowly scraped by. Leo's instincts drove him to grab Palverian and drop down to the top of the passing boat, trusting Christia to follow suit. After bouncing and rolling a distance, they came to a halt and regained their stances. They quickly dodged back and forth, attempting to survive the collisions of metal from the 2 large battle-class boats. They laid flat to avoid the aft rudders that swung dangerously close, and as soon as the danger passed, they were able to watch as the flagship careened and fell towards the buildings below. The smoking corpse of a ship plummeted before being met by a bright orange barrier that grew from the ground to meet it. As the remaining metal slammed into the force field, it began to melt away as if consumed while it slid to the ground. That looks like an expensive antimatter field. Are you sure they really needed our help? Leo shouted aloud to them over the heavy winds. That's not the point, Palverian replied. Queen Greneve's gruff voice carried over the wind, catching them off guard. Then what exactly was the point? The trio turned to see the menacing figure standing confidently behind them, her captain's cloak billowing violently in the wind. Half your fleet is gone, and the other half is turning to run, Christia shouted, taking a low fighting stance in preparation. It's only you against the 3 of us. You might as well give up now. It's the 3 of you against me. I believe the odds are in my favor, Greneve proclaimed. She reached and threw off the tattered cloak that once covered her form. Her legs and arms were revealed to be mechanical, with gold trim and clear coverings, showing their insides. The pointed toes of her feet lifted like claws and stabbed into the metal of the ship's hull, giving her the sturdiness that the rest lacked. She opened the palms of her hands, and from her arms came 2 broad-bladed swords, which she gripped and swung around expertly. Leo and Christia worked themselves out of the encumbersome pirate clothing to reveal tight white jumpsuits. They prepared themselves for a fight as Leo yelled out, I call her arms if you want to take her legs. Palverian struggled to pull the clothing off. Great! A strategy! What can I do? Leo laughed as Christia answered him. It's not strategy. He's claiming souvenirs. They lunged forward to attack the pirate queen. Oh, that's just fantastic. Great idea, guys. Just all-out attack the cyborg pirate. Palverian's arms flailed about, clearly flustered by everything currently happening to him. Christia ducked under the first swipe and slid, attempting to throw a punch into the queen's stomach. Leo jumped over the same swing, but miscalculated the motion of the ship below them and landed a bit off of his intended mark. The queen swung her second hand downward to strike Christia. The blade dug into the hole after Christia had rolled to the side and caused the queen to struggle pulling it out. Leo pulled the pirate's knife he had tucked in his boot and ran forward at the opening he was given with the struggling queen. He plunged the knife into the robotic knee between the gears and wires. The queen shouted in pain as sparks sprung from the leg that no longer listened to her muscles' pulses. She let go of the useless sword and slammed her fist down on the leg, forcing it to detach from her. She prepared to swing the blade she had left until her eyes caught the large undercarriage of another fleet ship about to crush them. Leo and Christia scrambled to get to Palverian and slid off of the crashing ship to enter into a free fall towards the antimatter field surrounding the Crown's base. Leo held on to Palverian as they tumbled through the air. "Can't say I didn't see this happening eventually. How are we getting out of this one, smart guy?" Palverian attempted to calm himself and gather his thoughts, despite the feeling of his guts rising through his throat. "The suits have microtech fibers, and they can fold a few dozen times and not seem much thicker than a regular shirt. There's a parachute on the back." Leo attempted to straighten out their fall so they would have more control. "How do we deploy it?" "The suit senses the inertia and wind pressure. All you need now is a pat on the back." Palverian tapped Leo's back, which unfolded the parachute, yanking them into a softer fall. Christia passed them, witnessing what had been done, and copied their motion to release her own chute. They aimed themselves to land away from the force field and the falling ships. Palverian held tight to Leo, not wanting to have to use his own parachute. "What happened to Greneve?" "She seemed to be in a bit of a pinch. She's probably a bit pinned down," Leo answered as they soared safely to the ground. Christia landed nearby, detached the chute, and walked over with a victorious strut. "I heard that, by the way, and it was absolutely terrible. Any word on the rest of the crews?" Pal tapped his ear and listened for a few moments before replying. "It's done. They're shattered. Dowie's plan succeeded. The solar trade is broken and being taken in, clan by clan." They shared smiles before Christia announced, "It sounds like Avalon is on the map."
Well, that was fun, wasn't it?
That was fun. I had fun. Did you guys have fun? You can't answer, so I'm going to say you had fun.
We will put our words in your mouth.
Or in your ears.
Yeah, most likely their ears.
So just once again, this podcast is brought to you by our wonderful supporters. My dear wife, Anna Brown, I've ranted and raved many a times about her, and I can rant and rave more if you guys would wish. But I love her and I appreciate her so much.
My wife, Joanna Lusk-Smith, she is amazing. I can't say enough about her, about how much what she does for me. And I'd like to also shout out to my parents, who push me to keep doing what I love. My dad, who always wants to see me come out with stories like this. Maybe not exactly how he wants, but he's always encouraging me to be creative. And my mother, who just pushes me to do exactly what makes me happy. And to all you listeners, we've got...
For listeners like you.
For listeners like you. Thank you, Lauren and Lottie, for having your comments and things on social media.
And for sharing almost every post.
Thank you guys so much. Now,
leaving you with a nice sound hug until we return with Castaways next week.
You can give it. Go ahead. Get right up there. Oh, yeah. Get some breathing in there, too.
Okay, bye.